May the words of my mouth and the meditations of each heart be holy and acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. You may be seated. I was in a doctor's office not too long ago, a dentist's office. I don't remember for which child. I assume one of our children was with me. They were supposed to be. We have 3, so sometimes I lose track. But I recall sitting in one of those chairs. You know, they are kind of the same in those waiting rooms, same kinds of side tables and the fluorescent lights overhead, a few paintings hanging crooked on the wall. I do remember they were playing a station of contemporary country music over the speakers. I'm not sure what you think about that kind of music, but I was thinking, you know, this is pretty ingenious, man. This is pretty smart, because being forced to wait and listen to contemporary country music makes any dental procedure seem way less painful. I do remember something else. There was a mother there with 2 daughters. One a surly-looking middle schooler, and a little one, maybe 3 years old, I think, maybe 3. The mother was on her phone. Didn't seem to me like she was scrolling through social media. She had a piece of paper in her other hand she kept referring to. She was taking care of some sort of business or bill. You know, we do everything on those phones today. Well, I should say she was trying to take care of some business, but the little one was having none of it. Little girl was going around picking up every magazine in the office one at a time. She would flip through the magazine, find some picture or photo of something she liked, walked over to her mother, stuck the page in her mother's face and said, "Look, Mommy, look, it's pretty." And the mother would say, yes, that is so pretty. And then go back to her phone and her business. A few seconds later, a different magazine, a different picture, going up to her mother, "Look, Mommy, look, so pretty." The mother would say, yes, that is pretty. And this was going on for quite some time, and you could see the mother's face growing more and more exasperated and impatient. She looked to her middle school daughter for a little bit of help, a little bit of relief, and that wasn't going to happen. That woman would have had better luck squeezing orange juice out of a cow than to have her middle school daughter help her at the moment. So just over and over, the same thing. "Look, Mommy, look, look." We've heard from a pastor this morning. Who that pastor was, we're not entirely sure. Some think he was a pastor in Ephesus writing to his church. Others think he might have been a pastor writing to several different churches. Whether it was one church or several is of no significant matter, I suppose. What does matter is that the people to who this pastor is writing, they're struggling. The church is struggling. You know, and I think that's something we often miss. That for as long as there have been churches, those churches have struggled. Oh, sure, sometimes, you know, we might hear the romanticized sermons about the early church. Sometimes we're shown some nostalgic Polaroid photo of a church without trouble, a church without blemish, a church of common life and purpose and mission. And there have been countless religious movements throughout history that have attempted to be that pure, unadulterated community without conflict or error. And the whole time, they're trying to reproduce a picture that was photoshopped in the first place. I think it's safe to assume the pastor writing this letter, the one you and I call 1 John, is struggling too, because there's no such thing as a struggling church without a struggling pastor. He's a pastor in the community of John, a church, or more likely a kind of satellite of churches who gathered around the Gospel of John, the words in the stories that came from that particular gospel. You know, the turning of water to wine, Nicodemus sneaking away in the dark to ask Jesus questions, the woman at the well, the bread of life, the good shepherd, the weeping at Lazarus' tomb, Mary pouring a jar of perfume atop Jesus' feet, the betrayal, the abandonment, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. All of it. That's what they gathered around. A people in some ways very different from you and I, and in other ways probably not so different. Reading these stories, singing their songs, gathering at the table together, a people learning to be the church, a beloved community, a place of belonging. But gradually, something began to creep in, something began to cause trouble. Gnosticism is the name the commentaries give to the trouble. It's a philosophy, very esoteric, secretive, mysterious, and attractive. Oh yeah, it was foxy. All the celebrities were into it. A philosophy that tended to get people's heads so far up in the clouds they ceased being any earthly good, a teaching that confused how the church thought and talked about Jesus. If you'd like to know more about that, you should just go home and look it up. Because I can't think of a more Gnostic thing to do than talk about Gnosticism from behind the pulpit for the next 5 minutes. But what you need to know is that this church, once so full of hope and so full of love and fervor, now they're anxious, they're fearful, they're despondent, membership dropping, people struggling, demanding answers to impossible questions, gossip, children and parents arguing, marriages on the rocks, the finance committee is wringing their hands, the personnel committee is scratching their heads, the staff is looking to the pastor, and do you know what this pastor does? Do you know what he does? He sits down, he takes out a pen and paper, and he writes a love letter to his church. And halfway through the letter, his words leap from the page when he writes, "See." Some translations say, "Behold." See what kind of love the Father has for us, that we should be called children of God. Can't you see the love? Can't you still see God at work? It's almost like he's running up to them and he's holding something in front of their faces and he's saying, look, look, look. And this struggling pastor reminds his church of not only who they are, but whose they are. Beloved children of God. And to be a child of God is to abide in God. And to abide in God means to abide in the love of God. And that love, this pastor reminds his people, that love, that kind of love casts out fear. I've been reminded to look lately. Over the past month, we've had people stand up here behind this pulpit and offer us stewardship reflections. I've loved every single one of them because each of them is either holding something up before us that they find beautiful in the life of St. Andrew's and even more beautiful in their life with God. A week ago, Sunday night, in what, as far as I know, was the record coldest trunk or treat here at St. Andrew's, our church gathered in the parking lot in 30-degree weather to pass out candy, sling hot dogs, and carry on an important tradition. You bundled up, you stuffed pocket warmers down your clothes, we huddled around little propane heaters, an exercise in futility, but we still did it. And we did this all to show love and hospitality to hundreds of children and families in our community. This past Thursday night, a remarkable team of people from both St. Andrews and the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Group hosted a Dias de los Muertos event. We entered this space full of ofrendas, all of which you can still see this morning. The sacredness of that moment was palpable as we remembered together those who have died, those we love and still honor. Then, escorted outside by a mariachi band, we continued our time together, eating and drinking and listening to music and watching folklorico dancers, celebrating a moment even in the midst of grief with so many who might have never crossed the threshold of this church. So many beautiful people. And this morning, we get to baptize Wells Benton Walker. Baptism being one way in which the church for centuries has proclaimed the love of God by proclaiming that all of us are created in the image of God. All of us are beloved children of God. See what kind of love the Father has given us. Can you see it, St. Andrews? Because when you give, that is what you are giving to. That's where it's going. So we can keep on holding up things that we find beautiful and awesome and sacred, holding them up to one another and to the community around us, saying, see what kind of love. See what kind of love. You know, a funny thing happened at that dentist's office. That little girl, she kept it up. Didn't seem to have any plan on giving up any of that anytime soon. Eventually, an older man, kind of a cowboyish looking dude, grandfatherly nature about him, he said to the little girl, "Can I see what you're showing your mommy to?" Well, that girl must have thought that was the neatest thing in the whole world, because she walked right over to his chair, put the picture right in his face, and said, look, it's pretty. And the old man said, "It sure is pretty." There was a boy there sitting not too far from them. He got curious and subtly leaned over, still trying to play it cool, but he subtly leaned over to see what all the fuss was about, to see what they were looking at. Well, that's all it took. She just knew if these two want to see it, then everybody should get to see it. And pretty soon, that little girl was walking up to all of us in that waiting room. Each magazine, each picture, anything she found beautiful. Anything she found good, anything that she just loved, holding it up before us, saying, look, look, look. Amen.